Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. I am the Reverend John Cullinan, your minister here, and tripping over his words today. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people and gather together in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are at this moment, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome to be a part of this community. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors or first or second time guests we have among us this morning. I want to invite you to join us all for some coffee and conversation in the fellowship hall after the service. I would love to meet you face to face and answer any questions you might have about our community here. And now, take a moment to center yourselves as we begin this morning's service. We enter this sanctuary for kindness and comfort. May rough, worn hands and aching backs be healed. We enter this sanctuary of hope for equality. May those who labor to survive live to know justice. We enter this sanctuary of love and vocation. May our bonds of solidarity be strengthened. We enter this sanctuary of courage and friendship. May we proceed hand in hand toward freedom. Come, let us worship together on this beautiful morning. Would you all please rise in body or spirit and join in our opening hymn, number 38. Please remain standing and join in our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. Quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. Please be seated. Candles have been lit this morning for Nell Jo King, Nyla's aunt, with serious eye issues and in danger of losing her vision, and Tim Fudge, Nyla's friend, diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. For all our joys, all our sorrows, whether we share them with one another or we hold them in the tender silence of our hearts, let us be together now in a moment of silence. Please join with me now in a spirit of prayer and contemplation. Eternal and beloved, gracious source of all life and all love, we come together this morning grateful for this time out of time, which we have set apart so that we might become more fully present to ourselves, to each other, and to that which we call holy. May our joys be celebrated together, our wounds be healed together, our hearts be opened together. Let us give thanks this day for the gift of this community and all that it gives us, for the people who meet us where we are, for the people who love us without condition, for the people who challenge us to bring forth our best selves, for the place in the circle that is always open to us, for the hand and the heart that is there when we need it, without question and without fail. May the vision of this community as it is and as it can be etched in our minds and our hearts, so that we might find the inspiration and the strength to build a whole world in its image. All this we pray in the names of those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Amen. And if the young and the young at heart would like to join me here in the front of the sanctuary, I have a story this morning. Or I can just stand right here. I'd like to share a story with you today, a story about a simple little spider who did an amazing thing. Now, you'll find versions of this story in Christian and Jewish and Muslim traditions and in ancient Japanese folk tales. In the Christian version, the baby Jesus, Mary, and Joseph are hiding from King Herod. In the Jewish version, a young David is hiding from King Saul. In the Muslim version, the Prophet Muhammad and his friend Abu Bakr are hiding from a crowd of people who want to harm them. And in the Japanese version, the great shogun warrior Yoritomo is hiding from his enemies. In all of these stories, though, the spider is just a spider. And it begins, as all good stories do, once upon a time. A very important person was watching a spider weave her web. And the very important person thought to herself, Why in the world did God make spiders? What good are they? They aren't beautiful or cute. They can't do tricks. They don't guard the house or make anything we humans can eat or wear. They don't sing or make interesting sounds. And those webs they're always building are just a nuisance. And the little spider overheard her, but they didn't care. They just kept working on their web. Soon, though, the very important person was in trouble. Her enemies were out to get her. She had to run and hide. She hid in the deepest, darkest cave she could find, but still she was worried that her enemies would find her. And just then she noticed that the little spider had started building a new web at the entrance to the cave. And she was too afraid to shoo her away for fear that her enemies might hear her, so she just stayed very quiet and watched the spider work. In no time, the cave entrance was completely covered by the web. And it was just in time, because right then, the very important person's enemies came running up to the cave. But they didn't go in. "Yuck," said their leader. "No need to go into that cave. Look at that big spider web. It's clear no one has been in there in a long time." And the very important person realized something very important that day. Spiders are the best. So what if they're not beautiful or cute and can't do tricks or sing and can't guard the house or make things that humans can eat or wear? The spider deserves our kindness and respect just like all animals. And the spider just shrugged their many little shoulders and said, just doing what spiders do. But thanks for noticing. Have you ever looked closely at a spider's web? Each individual thread is so thin and delicate you can barely see it. But the web itself is incredibly strong. And this great, strong web is made by just one little spider doing what spiders do best. And what the very important person in our story came to understand is that every being is worthy of respect and kindness. Every being has a precious life to live. Even the littlest spider can save the life of a very important person. Even the littlest spider is very important too. And that is our story this morning. We have what's going on at our intention table this morning? Just some coloring? Excellent. All right, coloring is out there. Feel free to join. In my social media feeds the last couple of weeks, I've seen news stories shared about a new phenomenon among young workers in the labor market today. They call it quiet quitting, which is not at all what I assumed it was when you hear that phrase. I thought it meant people just walking away without telling anybody, but no. Quiet quitting, it turns out, is just another word for doing what you're expected to do for the money they're paying you. Not putting in 60 hours when you have a 40-hour job, not being available 24/7 to be texted by your supervisors day in and day out, not doing anything extra beyond what you are hired to do so that you can, have a life outside of your work. But it's been relabeled quiet quitting, as if something horrible is happening in the process. No one wants to work today. That bandies about constantly now as we see people even in this town struggling to hang on to employees here for whatever reason. Never mind that pay may not be good, that benefits may not be available, that they're expected to not quiet quit while they are working. Nobody wants to work. It has nothing to do with the conditions that we put upon labor today. In 1968, the sanitation workers of Memphis, Tennessee were on strike. Martin Luther King Jr. went down to Memphis in order to help them with their efforts to organize because they had been cut out of the legal process for unionizing as public employees of the city of Memphis. They were not even employees at the time. The sanitation workers of Memphis were day laborers, reliant on being chosen for the day to do their work. And they were cut out of that ability to unionize by federal law because they worked in a service industry, that they were an essential worker to the running of a good and safe community, and therefore could not be protected by the federal labor laws that were established with the New Deal. King came down to give them courage and to help them organize. And while we know his speech there as his final speech before he was assassinated, he is known also for establishing the Poor People's Campaign there and for having a lot to say about the value of work. Let me say this to you tonight, he said, that wherever you are engaged in work that serves humanity and is for the building of humanity, it has dignity and it has worth. At that time, not all work was created equal. At the time that the New Deal was setting out federal regulations for labor, public service was a relatively new industry. Sanitation had been done by private contracts. Sanitation as a public service was a relatively new idea, as well as a lot of the other public services necessary for maintaining a community coming into the government sector instead of private work. At the time of the New Deal, they wanted to control just how much money was going out and just how much we would have to pay for all of that. They wanted to limit the amount of money going out and who got to get the money. And so they equated public service with domestic work. which was at the time low paying, work done by predominantly women, by predominantly black women. And this is what they equated all of the necessary functions of a civic government to. Domestics were unprotected in the New Deal. And they were unprotected to keep pay low so that they could keep our taxes low. And again, this affected mostly women and people of color. That lack of protection for domestics still stands today. In 2009, I'm going to say, because I didn't write that down in my notes, the Supreme Court upheld that home health care workers were to be considered domestic employees, that was the value label that was placed upon that sort of work. And what that meant was that people most in need would not get help from the government. Home health care workers maintain low wages today for the work that they do, and it's the amount they're not getting paid that is being sacrificed on their part for our benefit when we enter into that healthcare system. In the public consciousness today, this means that there is still this notion that there is a relative value to labor. And we frame it in terms of what is skilled and what is unskilled. In the public consciousness, we hold on to this idea of unskilled labor. It persists today, even 80 years after people started making that connection between domestics and public service. Your value to the community is low if you have an unskilled job. And because we practice a work culture the way we do in the United States, your value as a person is low because your unskilled labor doesn't really contribute all that much to our society. That is the general mentality. And what that leads us to in this nation is people working hours and hours a week for below a living wage, with no benefits or chance for benefits, either because they're not offered or they get scheduled to just below the threshold of where benefits should be offered, or they're scheduled for long hours and are expected to go above and beyond outside the scope of their duties. And unskilled labor is subject to a lot of abuse, verbal, emotional, mental, physical, sometimes, either from bosses or from the customers who benefit from the services, who feel entitled to be served because this labor is unskilled. No one wants to work today? Let me ask, who would under those conditions? The poet Marge Piercy writes this: "The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along. We're not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums. But you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. We are all, each of us, every human, capable of serving a purpose in this world, and a purpose that has an impact on the world around us. We derive meaning from our lives, from knowing that our presence here matters to the world, that it has an impact on our own life and the lives around us. A person derives a sense of dignity from knowing that their life has value because it just is, in and of itself. And we arrive, in part, to this sense of value and meaning and dignity when we are able to live without fear of how we're going to survive, so that we can submerge ourselves in a task and make ourselves feel fulfilled, as though we have purpose. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. I love that the preface to each of those principles that carries down through all is that we affirm and promote. It's not just a vague concept we hang on to. It's not a belief that we hold deep in our hearts. The principle is an imperative. We promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. But worth and dignity of human beings is something that we struggle with in this world too, because we inherit old concepts in our society about the relative worth of people, of the notion that dignity can easily be squandered by anyone. And to some extent, that may be true. Sometimes it's hard to recognize dignity in certain situations. So how do we follow the imperative of our principle despite whatever evidence might be in front of us? The Reverend William Schultz, a Unitarian Universalist minister who was for a time the leader of our Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, and before that the director of Amnesty International, gave a talk nearly 20 years ago now at one of our General Assemblies, addressing the assembled professional organization of our ministers. The title of the speech was "What Torture Has Taught Me," reflecting on his time in Amnesty International. What he spoke of was that sense of all dignity lost in people, that it's hard to see dignity at a time because we're carrying out the way we live as humans relating in harmful ways, in ways that value some people more than others, in ways that devalue other human beings to the point where we could consider torturing. Where is the dignity in that situation? In those situations, he asks, there isn't, he says, is the hard truth. The dignity is not obviously inherent in those moments. But where the dignity comes from is in our capacity to assume it is there, to imbue the sense of dignity on others even when we can't see it. We assume dignity of others, especially when it seems lacking in the moment, especially when others don't seem capable of offering dignity to others. We treat one another as if and especially when others strip it away. And so I come back to the sense of the value of labor. As a society, we value labor on a relative scale defined by skill level, the skilled or the unskilled. We also value labor sometimes on the notion of how little we can legally get away with. But we create some false comparisons. Somehow the CEO is more valuable to society than the sanitation worker. Somehow the doctor is more valuable to society than the home health care worker. At least in how we define them legally and how we internalize those notions. The sanitation workers in Memphis went on strike because they understood the value of their labor to the society that they were contributing to. They understood also that they were being purposefully undervalued. But where are we without any of those labors carried out? Sanitation, maintenance, burger flippers. Flipping burgers, for some reason, has become the shorthand for the lowest rung on the labor ladder, the ultimate in unskilled work in this country. They're just teenagers. As if the age of the human matters to whether or not we assign value or dignity to what they contribute to us. Whenever the minimum wage debate comes up, it's the first profession named as an argument against raising things. Yeah, it's just teenagers working for pocket money. Doesn't need to be that high. And we know that's not necessarily true. For one thing, there are plenty of older people working in jobs like that. And we don't recognize the skill that actually exists for that work. You can see how we embody the lack of regard for people who work in, say, food service positions anytime you go out to eat. Pay attention to your fellow customers at the table. Somebody's always just kind of grinding away at one of the wait staff, demanding more than maybe they should, assuming they are entitled to the service the way they want it because the other person is working in a service industry. You can sometimes see the worst instincts of humanity come out in a food service situation. But there's still skill involved. There's still value to the work. I am one of those rare creatures who majored in performing arts and has never worked a food service job in his life. There are only 5 of us in existence. And it's not because I was afraid of the hard work it entailed, it was because I knew I didn't have the skills to carry out that job with any success. I don't have the patience. My brain is not organized enough to keep 5 different tables going on in his head at the same time. I don't have the skills. And so I have a deep respect for people who do have the skills to do that. The wait staff at your restaurant, the line cooks working behind the scenes, the baristas at Starbucks. Try getting somebody who doesn't know how to work the machines to make your latte in the morning and see how unskilled that labor is at that point. And the burger flippers. Got to know how the machines work. Got to know how to handle money. Got to know when things are done. Got to have a sense of pride in the product you're serving to others. There's skill in that, and there is value. Going out to eat is something that brings joy and pleasure and satisfaction to people. It is something that makes our lives worth living for a moment. Adds a little bit of intangible value to our lives, and thus adds value to the community. Even the assumed lowest rung on the work ladder provides something that we need. Now, there's much about the current labor situation in our country that can be fixed via legislation, and people are trying. But the law can't fix our perceptions, can't break down the point of view we have inherited over decades about the relative value of skilled and unskilled labor. We are still inheritors of a harmful worldview about the value of human existence vis-a-vis the work that we do. It's a point of view that divides people into the worthy and the unworthy. Leads those on the unworthy side of things to internalize that sense of lack of worth. Internalizes those who feel they are told they are more worthy because of the work they do, to look down upon those who are unskilled. It ultimately tears the fabric of our communities. We are called on to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people in every aspect of their lives. Who we love, what we do. We are given the imperative to promote it. The change in perception begins in our own selves. Begins with a change in an attitude to the people who work around us, to our own work and its value, to the narrative that we have been told over time that some work doesn't merit dignity or value. We're at a real dream of 1,000 cats moment here. We have a chance to change the perception just here in this community, just here promoting our principles in the world. I lost the quote I wanted to close with. May it be so. Prepared to return to our everyday lives, it is time to give something of the gifts of this congregation back to the larger community we are part of. It is time for our offering. During the month of September, all cash and undesignated funds that we collect will be added to the fund we keep for the Afghan refugee family that we are sponsoring to cover incidental expenses and needs as they arise. The offering will now be accepted. May what you give bring you joy and a deeper relationship with this community. That may be the most perfectly timed offertory we've ever had. Before we depart, we have just one announcement to share this week. Next Saturday morning, we're going to have a closet clean-out day for particularly the RE supply closet and worship supplies here in the sanctuary. Everything is a mess. We've taken really bad care of ourselves, putting things away properly over the pandemic. We got lazy. It's time to fix things. We will be here from 9 to noon on Saturday. We'll have some breakfast snacks available and coffee will be made. But if you can lend a hand just kind of emptying things out and sorting and helping us put stuff away just to get things organized again, we would really appreciate you helping out. And now please rise in body or spirit and join in our closing hymn, number 128. Friends, may life bless us and keep us. May the light of life shine upon us and out from within us and be gracious to us and bring us peace. For this is the day. This is the one wild and precious life we have been given. So let us all find a way to rejoice and be glad in it. Go in peace.